The message came in just as Sarah was helping a customer at her boutique. Between folding scarves and smiling politely, she glanced at her phone. "I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my 20-year-old girlfriend. I already emptied our joint account. Haha." For a second, her hand hovered over the counter, but it didn't shake. Her voice stayed calm as she helped Mrs. Peterson choose a necklace. Only her eyes tightened slightly, the only sign that her 12-year marriage had just ended through a cruel text. When Mrs. Peterson left, Sarah finally looked at the screen again and typed 2 words. "Good luck." Sarah was 38, old enough to recognize betrayal when it walked into her life. David probably thought he'd won, imagining her broken, crying somewhere on the floor. But instead, she calmly locked the boutique for the day. The signs had been there for months. The late nights that never matched his office records, the new passwords, the sudden obsession with the gym. 3 months ago, she had found a restaurant receipt for 2. That same evening, she had opened a secret bank account in another bank. A week later, when David suggested combining their accounts for simplicity, she smiled and agreed, while quietly transferring every dollar she'd earned. The joint account David had emptied contained just enough to keep him from getting suspicious. 2 months of deposits, nothing more. The rest of her savings was safe, along with digital copies of every shady transaction he'd made in the last year. Her phone buzzed again. "Don't bother begging. Tina and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later." Sarah let out a small, tired laugh. Tina, the new receptionist from his office. She had noticed her during the company's Christmas party, the girl's hand lingering too long on David's arm, her laugh too loud. Sarah didn't reply. She simply called her lawyer. "It's time," she said. "He just made his move." Her lawyer's calm voice came through the line. "The papers are ready. Do you want him served in Miami?" Sarah smiled faintly. "No rush. Let him think he's winning first." Moments later, another text came from David. "I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger after all. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy." Her little shop, the thriving boutique she'd built from scratch, earning more than his corporate salary. The one whose profits she'd kept separate, just in case. She poured herself a cup of tea and whispered to the empty room, "Let him enjoy his victory while it lasts." That evening, Sarah sat in her living room. Her house, inherited from her grandmother. She'd kept it in her name, despite David's repeated hints to add him to the deed. She looked through their wedding album. He'd been handsome then, before his midlife crisis turned him into a stranger chasing youth he could never reclaim. Her phone buzzed again with messages full of arrogance. "I've been planning this for months. Tina understands me. You'll be fine. Maybe you'll find someone your own age." Sarah took screenshots of every word, quietly saving them as evidence. Let him keep talking. Every message was a rope tightening around his own lies. When the next text came in, Sarah almost laughed. "By the way, I used the joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift. LOL." She read it twice, disbelief mixing with cold amusement. He really thought she was powerless. Picking up her phone, she called the credit card company. "Mrs. Adams speaking," the woman said cheerfully. "How can I help?" Sarah's voice was calm. "I need to report fraudulent charges. 2 first-class tickets to Miami and a hotel at the Royal Palm. My husband used our joint card without permission." There was a pause, then a tone of quiet satisfaction from the agent. "We'll cancel them immediately, ma'am." As Sarah hung up, she felt the smallest spark of triumph. David and Tina would reach the airport tomorrow expecting luxury, only to meet confusion and humiliation instead. She poured herself a glass of wine, savoring the taste of calm victory. The phone buzzed again. "Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller." That one made her laugh out loud. "Oh, David," she murmured, "you really have no idea whose name is on that deed." Then another message arrived. "I know the shop means a lot to you. We can work out a fair payment for your half." Her half. The arrogance almost impressed her. Sarah turned off her phone and leaned back, watching the city lights flicker through her window. For years she'd built her boutique while he called it just a hobby. Every long night, every new client, every successful sale, all dismissed as playtime. But tomorrow he'd realize just how serious that hobby was. She opened her laptop and organized every document her lawyer would need. The property deed, tax files, business registration papers, and a folder labeled David Evidence. She smiled faintly at the name. Her grandmother had once told her, "Never fight a snake with anger. Fight with proof." Tonight Sarah was fully armed. Morning came with sunlight streaming through her curtains, and 10 unread messages. David's tone had shifted from smug to furious. "What the heck did you do? The airline cancelled our tickets. The hotel won't honor our reservation. Answer me." Sarah silenced her phone, slipped on her heels, and headed for her boutique. Fridays were busy, and she had a new shipment of designer handbags to display. Life went on, even when your husband ran off with someone young enough to call you ma'am. By noon, her shop buzzed with chatter, her employees laughing softly, unaware their boss had just outsmarted a man who thought she'd crumble. Around lunchtime, Sarah's phone rang again. It was David's mother, her voice sharp and defensive. "Sarah dear, David told us everything. He said you've been controlling, that you drove him away. Now you're being vindictive, blocking his travel plans." Sarah calmly placed the phone on speaker while arranging handbags. "Did he mention emptying our joint account? Or using our credit card to buy flights with his girlfriend?" There was silence, then a hesitant sigh. "He said you were cold and distant." Sarah's voice stayed even. "Barbara, I have his texts. Would you like me to read them?" Another pause. "He did seem cruel," the older woman admitted quietly. "Yes," Sarah said, turning the key in the display case. "And now he'll face the consequences." By late afternoon, the gossip had already begun spreading through David's family. His sister Lisa called next, pretending to check in. Sarah could hear the curiosity in her voice, thinly disguised as concern. "We heard you froze the cards. David and Tina are stuck near the airport," Lisa said. Sarah smiled faintly. "Then maybe he'll have time to reflect." Lisa lowered her voice. "You're really going through with the divorce?" "Yes," Sarah replied. "I've been ready for months. I just waited for him to make the final mistake." There was silence on the line before Lisa muttered, "He really thought you wouldn't fight back." Sarah's tone was light. "That's what makes it fun." Her lawyer called that evening, her tone brisk and satisfied. "The emergency hearing is set for Monday. His confession in those texts gives us everything we need. We'll freeze all remaining assets." Sarah nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her wineglass. "Has he been served yet?" "Not yet," the lawyer replied. "But we know where he's staying, a budget motel near the airport." Sarah let out a quiet chuckle. "Perfect," she said. "Let him enjoy the view before reality checks in." Outside, the city hummed with life while Sarah sat in silence, feeling something unexpected. Not anger but relief. For the first time in years she was in control. Saturday morning brought another wave of texts, this time filled with panic. "You think you're so smart. I made copies of all the boutique's records. Half that business is mine." Sarah didn't respond. She simply forwarded the message to her lawyer. "Another one for the file," she typed. Her lawyer replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Simple, efficient, and deeply satisfying. By noon, Sarah's boutique was full of customers. Her employees chatted cheerfully as sunlight spilled across the polished floor. To the outside world it was just another business day. Only Sarah knew she was in the middle of the sweetest revenge. Calm, legal, and beautifully planned. Monday arrived like Judgment Day. Sarah stood outside the courthouse, dressed in a tailored navy suit, her posture straight and confident. David appeared moments later, wearing clothes that tried too hard. Designer jeans too tight, a loud blazer, and sunglasses that couldn't hide the tension in his eyes. Tina waited outside, fidgeting nervously. Sarah's lawyer, Ms. Reynolds, gave her a reassuring smile. "Ready?" Sarah nodded. "Let's end this." Inside, the air was cold and sharp. David's smirk faltered when he saw the thick folder of evidence on Ms. Reynolds's desk. His own texts, bank records, and receipts neatly arranged like puzzle pieces spelling out "guilty." David's lawyer tried to sound confident. "Your Honor, my client admits to some mistakes, but Mrs. Parker has acted out of spite." Ms. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "Spite? You mean foresight? My client documented every suspicious action, every charge, every lie." The judge turned to David. "Did you empty the joint account?" Yes, but it was just. Did you use shared credit cards for a personal trip?" David's voice cracked. "It wasn't like that." "Then how was it?" the judge asked flatly. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of papers shuffling. Sarah didn't gloat. She just watched quietly as David's own words became the chain that bound him. When Ms. Reynolds presented the deed to Sarah's grandmother's house, the judge nodded. "This property is separate. Mr. Parker, you have no legal claim." David's jaw tightened. "But the business grew during our marriage," he argued. Ms. Reynolds smiled calmly. "Yes, because my client worked, while your client spent money on hotels and gym memberships. We have the receipts." A few quiet laughs rippled through the courtroom. David's face flushed red. The judge raised his gavel. "Given the evidence, the court freezes all shared assets. Mr. Parker must return any funds removed from joint accounts within 24 hours. David's mouth fell open. "That money's gone." "Then find it," the judge said coldly. Outside the courthouse, David stormed past reporters, his voice rising. "She planned this. She set me up." Sarah stepped into the sunlight, her heels tapping confidently against the marble steps. Tina trailed behind him, her expression pale and humiliated. "David, please," she whispered, but he ignored her. Sarah didn't look back. 4 years he'd underestimated her. Her patience, her planning, her quiet strength. Now the whole city would know the truth. She slipped into her car, took a deep breath, and smiled at her reflection. "Let him rage," she whispered. "I've already won." Over the next few weeks, David tried everything. He claimed he had invested in the boutique, that it was his idea. He even said he'd been her business partner. Each claim collapsed under documentation. Ms. Reynolds called it the cleanest defense she'd ever seen. Meanwhile, Tina's once bright social media was filled with cryptic posts about lessons learned and toxic relationships. Through whispers from mutual friends, Sarah learned the couple was now living in Tina's cramped studio apartment. "He's not the man I thought he was," Tina had written online. Sarah read it without bitterness. Some lessons, she thought, were worth the pain. As weeks passed, David's family began changing their tone. Lisa visited the boutique one afternoon. Her expression awkward but sincere. "I know we didn't believe you at first," she said softly, fingering a silk scarf. "He played the victim so well. But after seeing those messages, I can't defend him anymore." Sarah smiled gently. "It's fine, Lisa. People believe what they want to believe." Lisa nodded slowly. "He's living with our parents now. Mom's furious. She says he's embarrassed the whole family." Sarah chuckled. "He embarrassed himself." Lisa sighed. "You really came out of this stronger." Sarah's eyes glowed. "No, Lisa, I came out of it free." By the end of that month, Sarah's boutique was busier than ever. Customers who'd heard her story came by to show support, often leaving with more than they planned to buy. "My ex tried the same thing," one woman confessed. "Men like that never expect us to be smarter." Sarah smiled warmly. "Then let's keep surprising them." Every night as she closed the shop, she passed by the framed text she'd printed from David. "I'm leaving you. Haha." Below it, she'd placed her business license, signed and sealed. 2 documents, one symbolizing cruelty, the other victory. Sarah's phone still buzzed from time to time, messages from David swinging between anger and fake regret. "You've ruined everything. I never meant to hurt you. Can't we work something out?" She forwarded each one to Ms. Reynolds without replying. Silence was her sharpest weapon. Through friends, she heard that Tina had left him. "She couldn't stand living in that tiny apartment," one mutual acquaintance said. "Apparently, he kept complaining about her cooking and her clothes." Sarah only smiled. He always needed someone to blame. It amazed her how quickly men like David forgot who they used to be once the spotlight turned cold. The legal process moved steadily, with every attempt from David to reopen negotiations ending in failure. Each time, the court reminded him of his own written words. "You did this to yourself," the judge had said once, almost pitying him. Sarah stayed focused on her work. She expanded her product line, added new designers, and hosted small fashion events that brought in new clients. Her boutique became not just a store but a sanctuary for women, a place where strength was celebrated. Sometimes she'd overhear customers whisper, "That's her, the woman who didn't fall apart." Sarah never corrected them. She didn't need to. One evening, while closing up, Sarah received a call from Mrs. Adams, David's mother. The older woman's voice trembled. "Sarah, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. We shouldn't have believed his stories. The things he said about your age, about replacing you. It was cruel." Sarah leaned against the counter, her voice calm but distant. "You don't owe me an apology, Barbara. He made his choices." There was a pause. "He's not doing well," the woman continued softly. "He lost his promotion. The company found out about the relationship with Tina." Sarah listened silently, then said, "Maybe that's what he needs, a lesson life refused to teach gently." Word spread quickly through their small city. David, once proud of his office reputation, was now the subject of pity and quiet laughter. "He's been demoted," one of Sarah's clients mentioned during a shopping trip. Apparently, HR found messages between him and another receptionist. Sarah smiled faintly. It wasn't joy she felt, it was closure. She had spent years being careful, organized, and underestimated. Now the same qualities that once annoyed David had become her shield. Each decision she'd made, every detail she'd documented, now stood like armor between her and the chaos he'd created. The boutique was thriving beyond anything Sarah had imagined. She hired 2 new assistants and started considering a second location. A local journalist stopped by to interview her. "People are calling you an inspiration," the woman said with a smile. "What's your secret?" Sarah thought for a moment. "Preparation," she replied. "And never letting someone else's mistake define your life." The article ran a week later with the headline, "From Heartbreak to Powerhouse, the woman who turned betrayal into a brand." Business tripled. Customers came not only for fashion but for courage, a story they could wear. Meanwhile, David was sinking deeper. He'd tried gambling, hoping for fast money, but lost what little savings he had left. He'd borrowed from friends and failed to pay them back. One evening, Lisa called Sarah again. "He's angry all the time now," she said quietly. "Blames everyone but himself. Mom says he's living in denial." Sarah sighed. "Maybe hitting bottom will teach him to look up." Lisa hesitated before asking, "Do you ever miss him?" Sarah paused, then answered honestly, "I miss the version of him that respected me. But that man disappeared long before the divorce." Months passed, and Sarah's boutique expanded into an elegant second location across town. She hosted a grand opening that drew a large crowd, including local officials and media. As she cut the ribbon, cameras flashed, and applause filled the air. Somewhere across town, David sat in a small cafe, reading about the event on his phone. The headline read, "Local entrepreneur expands fashion empire after difficult divorce." He slammed the phone down and muttered, "She planned this from the start." But deep inside, even he knew the truth. She'd only planned to survive. The rest had been his own doing. A few weeks later, Sarah's lawyer sent her one last update. He tried filing a new petition to contest the settlement, she said. It was denied within minutes. The judge even ordered him to pay court costs. Sarah chuckled softly. He still doesn't understand when to stop. The lawyer smiled. Men like that rarely do. Sarah thanked her, hung up, and stared out her office window. The city looked brighter these days. Not because of success or revenge, but because peace had finally settled where chaos once lived. She had rebuilt herself, brick by brick, choice by choice. That weekend, Sarah hosted a private dinner for her staff. The boutique's team, all women, laughed, toasted, and shared stories of their journeys. "You've built something amazing," said Mia, her manager. "Not just a store, but a space where we all feel seen." Sarah smiled, raising her glass. "Then we'll keep building, stronger, wiser, together." That night, as she closed the door behind her, she noticed the framed text on the wall again. The cruel message that once symbolized heartbreak now stood as a reminder of victory. "Thank you for leaving," she whispered under her breath. "You freed me." By the end of the year, Sarah's boutique chain had become one of the most talked about local businesses. She had investors calling, magazines requesting interviews, and customers who came just to meet her. Meanwhile, David remained a ghost of his former self, living with his parents, telling anyone who'd listen that he'd been set up. But the world had moved on. People saw through him now. His name no longer carried charm or confidence, carried warning. And Sarah, she walked taller than ever, not out of pride but peace. The kind that comes when your worst ending becomes your best beginning. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Sarah's name appeared in a business magazine's top 10 female entrepreneurs to watch. Her story had gone beyond gossip. It had become inspiration. Reporters wrote about her resilience, about how she turned pain into progress. She smiled when she read the headline. "I didn't set out to inspire anyone," she told her assistant. "I just wanted to protect what was mine." But deep down, she knew that every woman reading her story would take something from it. A spark of strength to stand up when the world expected her to fall. Through mutual friends, Sarah heard that David had lost his job completely. The company, tired of his complaints and poor performance, let him go during a round of layoffs. "He's been trying to start a business," Lisa mentioned in a quiet phone call, "but nothing's working. He says people don't trust him anymore." Sarah only replied, "Trust is like glass, Lisa. Once it breaks, even if you glue it back together, the cracks remain." She hung up, feeling neither joy nor anger, just a calm acceptance. Life had given David every chance to learn. He simply chose not to. Sarah's second boutique thrived. Customers traveled from nearby cities just to see her collections. She started mentoring young women who wanted to start their own businesses. One afternoon, a nervous girl asked, "What if my husband doesn't support me?" Sarah smiled kindly. "Support is a gift, not a guarantee. Build it anyway." Those words stuck. People quoted her speeches, reposted her interviews, and tagged her in success stories. Slowly, Sarah realized that her boutique had become more than a business. It was a movement, proof that strength and softness could live in the same heart. One day, as Sarah was reviewing sales reports, a familiar face appeared in the store, Tina. The once confident receptionist now looked humbled, her smile shy. "Sarah," she began softly, "I owe you an apology." Sarah paused, studying her. "For what?" "For believing everything he said," Tina admitted. "He told me you were cold and selfish. I thought I was saving him from you. Then I watched him do the same things to me. When I saw your interviews, I realized you were the woman I should have learned from, not judged." Sarah gave a small smile. "We all learn, Tina. Some lessons cost more than others." They spoke for a few minutes. Tina shared how she'd gone back to school, earned a business degree, and started her own online marketing service. "You inspired me," she said quietly. "You showed me what real independence looks like." Sarah nodded with genuine warmth. "Then I'm proud of you." As Tina left, Sarah turned to her assistant. That was her, the young woman whispered. The girlfriend. Sarah chuckled softly. No, she said. That was just another woman who finally figured out her worth. It felt good to know that even the pain David caused had somehow planted seeds of growth in others. Months turned into a year, and Sarah's business empire grew to 4 locations. Her brand became a household name, representing elegance, courage, and reinvention. At an awards gala, she stood on stage in a shimmering silver gown, accepting a trophy for Businesswoman of the Year. Cameras flashed as she spoke. This isn't about revenge, she said to the crowd. It's about rebuilding. About remembering that even after someone tries to break you, you can still choose to rise. The audience erupted into applause, many of them knowing the story behind her words, the betrayal that became her beginning. Meanwhile, David was fading into obscurity. Friends stopped answering his calls. Employers ignored his applications. Rumors spread that he'd moved into a small apartment above a garage. Lisa mentioned once that he'd tried online dating, but it never went well. He still uses old pictures, she said. He keeps saying he's misunderstood. Sarah just smiled sadly. He doesn't need understanding. He needs growth. She no longer felt bitterness, only distance. David was a chapter she had read, learned from, and closed forever. 2 years after that cruel text message, Sarah stood on a grand stage at a national women's business conference. Her topic: Protect what you build. During the Q&A, a young woman asked, "My husband says keeping a separate account means I don't trust him. Am I wrong?" Sarah smiled, remembering. "No," she said gently. "You're not wrong. Protection isn't distrust, it's wisdom. Love doesn't mean blindness." The audience clapped, some wiping tears. In that moment, Sarah realized she had finally transformed from survivor to teacher. Her story now a lantern lighting the path for others. 5 years after the divorce, Sarah's boutique chain had expanded to 5 thriving locations. She employed over 30 women, each with her own story of strength. During the anniversary celebration of her first store, familiar faces filled the room. Loyal customers, friends, and even Mrs. Adams, David's mother. The older woman approached her with misty eyes. "He's still talking about the life he lost," she admitted softly. "He doesn't see that he threw it away." Sarah smiled gently. "We all see what we're ready to see, Barbara." The older woman nodded, then whispered, "You turned pain into power. I'm proud of you." As the celebration ended, Sarah stood alone near the display window, watching the city lights glow against the night. Her reflection smiled back, calm, graceful, and unbroken. On her office wall hung the same framed text, "I'm leaving you. Haha." Beneath it, another frame read, "Success is the best revenge." She touched the edge of the glass, whispering, "Thank you for leaving, David. You gave me my freedom." Outside, the world buzzed with life. Customers laughing, cars passing, lights shimmering. Inside, Sarah finally breathed the peace she'd earned. Her story didn't end in heartbreak. It ended in victory. Quiet, radiant, and hers alone.